Welcome everyone to Warrior Women in Business, episode 46. I couldn't be happier to be here live and in person, in the flesh, in real life, with Anne del Castillo. Castillo, thank you for having me. From New York City Department of Cultural Affairs. And today we're going to get into honestly, my favorite topic, which is helping artists and creative professionals thrive in the city. I think it's been, for me as an artist, a promoter of people in the arts, a big issue in our community. So I asked Anne to be on to share her wisdom, her experience, and all her achievements with us today. So I'll give a little bit of a bio on Anne, and then we're gonna just jump into the questions. First, I want to start with who is Warrior Women in Business? For those of you that happen to be new to our podcast, Warrior Women in Business is a media and marketing agency that's been helping female entrepreneurs since 2017. We're a subset of my main business, JSMedia, which is a branding and marketing agency, helping executives, entrepreneurs, and companies thrive in digital marketing. And Warrior Women in Business, our mission is really to bring leaders like Anne and others that I've been really lucky to have on my podcast to female entrepreneurs and my favorite people, artists, to really help them thrive and understand what they may be missing in their own career development. My name is Jasmine Sandler. I'm really happy to be here. And with that being said, I want to jump right in. So yes, so Anne is currently Senior Policy Advisor with the Department of Cultural Affairs, and she's formerly with the New York City Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. And we were chatting pre-show while we were having technical difficulties, which I always have on Warrior Women in Business, about how the scene used to be in New York City, how we used to be able to go out every night and find new music or new entertainment, and it was thriving. And then we've come into a lot of challenges, right? I'd like to talk about a lot today, but challenges from post-2000 through COVID, and just really jump into it. So first and foremost, we want to know your story. So I forgot to mention that Anne has 25 plus years of experience in arts and entertainment in general. She's a whiz. I actually asked her to set up the whole Zoom for us today. So thank you. So tell us your story a little bit. How did you go from film and TV, arts and entertainment into government, and what's that been like?
So, I grew up in New York City, and you can't go anywhere in New York City without being surrounded by arts and entertainment.
True.
And so I've always felt like that's how I sort of found myself, the child of an immigrant, single mom. And so arts and entertainment is really where I found my identity. But I worked for a number of years in film and television on the production side, and then started to move into the business affairs side, fundraising, development, and eventually contracts. And so about 15 years in, I decided to go back to law school and earn my JD while I was working full-time as head of business affairs for American Documentary.
A warrior woman.
And raising a newborn.
Oh, wow. Even more. Wow.
Kudos to you. And then in 2014, a former colleague of mine from American Documentary, Cynthia Lopez, she was appointed commissioner of the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment.
Okay.
And so she asked me to join her team as director of legal affairs. And so that was my entry into the government space. And then eventually I worked my way up, really wanted to understand how government works so that when I was doing contracts, they made sense. I like contracts to be grounded in the reality of operations.
Yeah, makes sense.
And then eventually was appointed commissioner. It was not something that I sought out.
Yeah.
But
tell us a little bit about that for those people that don't know anything about it, including maybe some Warrior Women members that are on from Los Angeles this morning. A little bit about the department and what.
Yes, absolutely. So the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, when I first joined, was really just charged with film production, permitting film production throughout New York, and running a number of workforce programs like the Made in New York Production Assistant Training Program. And then we also they still run the Municipal Radio and Television Network, NYC Media. And we were doing fine with all of that, but then after Cynthia Lopez, Julie Menon came on as commissioner, and our portfolio expanded exponentially to include all of New York City entertainment. So music, theater, advertising, publishing.
And when was
digital
that
content.
around?
That was in 2016.
Okay, yeah.
And so, you know, we have the Department of Cultural Affairs, which focuses exclusively on nonprofit cultural institutions, but we didn't really have a division that was focused on the creative sectors. And so that became the mandate at the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. And so when I took on the role after Julie stepped down, I was a little bit nervous. I mean, that was not, like, I never saw myself as leading an agency, much less one
responsibility
with, I mean, it's what New York is known for, our arts and entertainment.
Absolutely.
And so I was a little bit reluctant, to be honest, to take on that role. It's a major global capital, and it's the heart of what we do.
Absolutely.
But I was very fortunate to have an incredible team and a lot of support. You know, I know we'll talk about this throughout the conversation, but a lot of support and mentorship from other, you know, Cynthia continued to be a strong support. Julie, my predecessors who were the commissioners before me, and Catherine Oliver, who was also. So I was very fortunate to have that line to rely on for guidance as I was sort of navigating my way through this new role as commissioner for media and entertainment. There's 60 agencies in New York City.
Around that?
No,
In general.
writ large, yes.
Right, I was
So
gonna
this is
say.
one of them, yes.
Yeah.
But for those who
Small
Yes,
business,
yes.
you know, housing, there's just so much.
And I think that's really the remit of the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, and to some degree, cultural affairs as well, right? Is to translate the needs of the creative sectors for some of the other agencies in
I
New York City, right? So we are dedicated solely to the creative sectors, so that when we're talking to Economic Development Corporation or Small Business Services, we can bring that level of expertise on behalf of the creative sectors.
Yeah, because it's like you said, it's the cornerstone, the heart of the Big Apple, right? If we still use that term. I have no idea. So I feel that that's bringing in the tourists, you know, the money into New York City.
It's roughly
So those
10% of New York City's overall economy. It's $150 billion in economic activity.
Wow.
Yeah, if you count nightlife as well.
Right.
So,
Well, I was thinking Broadway, nightlife.
Yeah.
It's all one in one sum.
Yeah. So in addition to being sort of the core of identity of New York City, it's also a significant economic engine for the city.
Yeah. Well, that's a great thing to hear.
Yes.
So one thing that you noted, it's not really on my questions, but I'm just gonna go here.
Sure.
You just mentioned 4 women, I think, to me, that helped you. Very interesting, because we're a women business, we're interested in how women help other women. So is it that there are more women involved with that department or in these type of, I would say, sectors or roles that you see, or you just happen to find those mentors? What, can you talk about that a little bit?
So I think certainly in the more recent administrations of you know, Bloomberg, de Blasio, Adams, really been committed to advancing women in leadership positions.
Great.
You know, Mayor Adams
Really, because it's just given so many opportunities, it sounds like. So let's talk a little bit about COVID.
Yeah.
Where I sat in my apartment drooling to go outside in New York City. And the venues lost so much money and artists struggled and things just basically shut down. Outside of the genius idea of opening up all the restaurants on the sidewalks, which was a great idea for the restaurant industry. But I know as a musician and a supporter of women in the arts in New York City that really just destroyed our economy. So can you talk to us about what happened there, how you helped to get us to, in arts and entertainment, bounce back a little bit, how long it took, maybe who were some of the supporters and what you learned from it? And I'm just
Sure.
gonna make sure my phone is up. Go ahead, go ahead.
You know, when I came in as commissioner, it was in 2019, and I think that was actually the height of the creative economy. You know, tourism was booming, Broadway's booming,
Right.
film and TV production had grown exponentially. And so I came in as a cheerleader of the creative sector.
Yeah.
And in March 2020, that took a dramatic turn, and we went,
Shut down.
I often say that we went from cheerleader to crisis counselor.
Sure.
Many people at the mayor's office of media and entertainment, you know, had worked or had some connection to the creative sector. So in addition to dealing with our own reactions to what was happening and trying to make sure that our team and our families were safe, we were then confronted with the reality of really being on the phone almost 24/7 during that period with members from across the spectrum of the creative economy, nightlife, theater, music, just looking for guidance. And so I think we identified really early on that what people needed most was information about how to take care of themselves and their loved ones. Access to resources, because everything shut down. And so what were they, and initially we thought it was going to be 2 weeks.
I didn't know, I remember.
And so, you know, people trying to help them make plans for 2 weeks and then quickly realizing that it was going to be longer than that.
Right.
So one of the things that we did early on was to make sure that people had information about where to access PPE, right? Protective equipment for their staff, for them, for the businesses, how to access short-term loans and grants, extending. So we also advocated for the extension of small business grants to include some nonprofit creative
which
industries,
is really
right?
fantastic.
Because they had, we just wanted to make sure that as many resources were available for people working in the creative space.
Question on that. So the relationship between the city and the state on funding, did you need to go to the state, or was it housed
It was
here?
kind of all hands on deck. Like there was,
It seems
so
like
we would
that.
translate. So there were city resources, there were state resources, and then there were federal resources. And our job was to help people understand how to get to those, right? And so we did a weekly newsletter where we detailed updates on what new resources were coming online. We held webinars for people to access so that they could ask direct questions. We would have webinars with the Small Business Administration at the federal level, the Empire State Development at the state level, and then ours, and then multiple agencies from the city. Human Resources Administration, which would give people access to food stamps and health benefits. And so we did that just sort of around the clock, and then we would survey the sector to see how they were doing, see what kind of guidance they needed. But it was definitely a time when there was just a lot of information sharing and trying to read what was happening on the ground, while at the same time then working with, for example, film and television industry and the theater industry to understand what would it take to get this back up and running, right? I think what we saw when film and TV and theater and live performance went down is the ripple effect it had on other industries. You know, I think people don't realize, like, beyond just those sectors feed the restaurant industry,
That's
supply chain.
100%.
And so we were really working hard to figure out how can we bring this back. And so we were in constant contact with film and television industry to figure out protocols. You know, these are all arts and entertainment. You work really closely together, and there's a lot of collaboration, and we kind of forget, but you couldn't sit this close to each other then. And so how are you going to mount a production? How are you going to rehearse? You couldn't sing without a mask. And so really just working with industries to figure out how to bring that back. We were fortunate to have film and television come back first. It came back, I think the first productions landed in August or September of 2020. And then by late, you know, the time gets a little muddied in my head.
I know,
but I think
it's true.
by late fall, the following spring, we started to see live performance make a return. In the meantime, we did come up with creative solutions. In addition to open restaurants, we also came up with open culture, where people could perform.
Right, I remember going to a few things at
and
Central
so,
Park.
And I just remember the feeling of people being able to engage with the arts again.
Yes, great.
In some way that
Yeah.
was, to hear the silence, I think, was really chilling initially.
I agree.
And so to have the performance and music come back to the streets, and now that's a permanent program where they continue to do that through.
Yeah, I
Because
know.
they saw it was so successful, and so they.
I
continue to
noticed
do
that, and also helps artists
Yes.
get more awareness and collaboration. And I but I understand what you mean about the ripple effect. It's
Yeah.
similar with running a small business, any small business. When one suffers, there's a ripple effect.
And so I
It's
think
really nice to see that there's support.
what was so important about the pandemic, and one of the biggest lessons that I hope we take away from that is that it really was a collaboration between government, the public, and business and industry.
Absolutely.
And that is something that we've seen continue and that we want to continue to nurture moving forward. I think it's important.
Very important.
Because we're not 100% back yet. We still, we just had these entertainment strikes which shut down production.
I actually want to talk about that for a second before I went on to my other question. Is with the entertainment strikes that happen, do you think, I would say, it sounds like the framework or structure that you seem to put together in terms of information sharing has made dealing with the strikes easier, or what would you say about that?
I wouldn't say easier. I think it's reminded us that we need to continue to message what sort of supports are available for our creative sector businesses. And I know that the team at the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment continue to provide webinars throughout the summer. They've been doing roundtables with various industry groups. I think there was just one for small business last week that they did. And so the conversation is ongoing, and I think that at least keeps people inspired and hopeful that they will weather these storms.
Yeah. So let's talk about programs. We have a lot to talk about in programs. JSM for Artists serves all artists. So I want to talk about let's just start with actors, writers, film and television. Talk about programs there, support there, anything you might be able to share with the people that happen to do that for a living that are watching.
So we actually have quite a number of programs to support artists. Importantly, right now, on November 1st, there's a deadline for the New York City Women's Fund.
Yes, I was going to bring that up. Right, the New York City Women's Fund, very important. I've been
Yes,
sharing
it's for
it like crazy.
Media, music, and theater.
Yeah.
So creatives working in those spaces can access grants through, it's a partnership of the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment and the New York Foundation for the Arts, which is also a partner of my current agency, the Department of Cultural Affairs. And so we just want to get the word out to as many creatives that they're eligible for this funding. We've given out nearly 4 million in the city has given out nearly 4 million in grants over the past 5 years. And so really just trying to raise the profile of women creatives in New York City. So there's that. And then there's also the Freelancers Hub, which offers free co-working space for freelancers and a ton of free resources like how to do your financials, how to file for taxes, how to, there's a ton of seminars that they have there. They're right at Industry City, which is also an incredible location for them to be in, given the level of entrepreneurial activity that's over there.
Yeah.
And then, so those are programs, but then there's also offices and agencies that are designed to help our creatives and entrepreneurs. There's the Small Business Services, which really exists to help small businesses in New York City.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that.
Okay, good.
Very.
And then there's the Mayor's Office of WWIB, Women and minority and women business entrepreneurs. And there's a ton of resources that they offer as well, particularly for businesses that are looking to do contracts with with city government.
And they're tied, let me ask a question as a former president of NAVO and working with that agency a little bit. So they're tied in, do they tie in with your department or do they come to you or do you go to them? And
It's
how does
kind
that
of
work?
a
Because I know a lot of the
yeah.
women watching are
Yes.
involved with that certification.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to learn. about
It's
that.
really so that you can get the certification so that you can do business, not just with our agency, but like
Okay.
other agencies in city government. Like
Okay.
there's Department of Education, Department of Youth and Community Development, Department of Aging. There's so many different programs that city agencies run that, we want to encourage our MWBEs and small businesses to participate. And then there's also a group called Women.NYC, which is run out of the Economic Development Corporation. They're primarily focused on future industries, so green tech, life sciences, but they also run a number of seminars and networking opportunities for women in particular that are looking to break into those fields. So,
okay, great.
as I said, this administration is really committed to the advancement of women in particular, and so very happy to see these programs and talk about them.
And I like what you talked about the information, because I feel that a lot of it's like navigation. They, especially around the certifications, access to, I've been running more women in business, I've been the president of NABO. I see a lot of women don't really know where the resources are, they don't really know what to do, they don't know how or if they should spend money on certification, where the grants are, because running a business is about time and money. So we'll be providing all this in the show notes, but I think that's really important, is for everyone to kind of start to learn and get a little bit educated.
It's funny, now I'm at the Department of Cultural Affairs, right? And so before, my work at the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment was really sort of industry focused. And as I mentioned, the Department of Cultural Affairs is really focused on the nonprofit cultural sector. And so the work that I'm doing as senior policy advisor here really builds on the work that I was doing at MOME. But now that I'm embedded with cultural affairs, I didn't realize exactly how much they do and how they interact with other city agencies like Economic Development Corporation, Small Business Services, Department of Design and Construction. Makes perfect sense. Everyone thinks of cultural affairs as just strictly a grant making agency. It is the largest municipal funder of arts in the country. So it's really remarkable, but they do so much more. So in addition to providing grants for cultural programming, they also support our city cultural institutions group. It's 34 institutions, cultural institutions that are on city property. There's also capital projects. They support capital projects and renovations and equipment at cultural institutions, and the public art program, which is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It's for every city funded construction project, there's 1% that needs to go to a public art piece on that project. And I think there's over 400 artworks throughout the city at this point in their 40 years. And then another one that would be helpful, particularly for creatives, is materials for the arts. It's one of the largest reuse centers. So film productions, theatrical productions that are breaking down their sets, they'll donate their wardrobes, their supplies to Materials for the Arts, and the Materials for the Arts will distribute it to schools, nonprofit organizations, artists, and so we're also keeping the arts sustainable for New York City.
So people that have, so let's say someone is developing a new arts and cultural program in a school, or maybe it's a for-profit organization, do they need to, is it a grant situation?
No, they have to be partnered with a nonprofit. For sure, because it's that's how Materials for the Arts is able to distribute. Is through nonprofit and educational partners.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it's, they really they help the city keep a lot of stuff out of landfill.
That's the wonderful part about it.
And given the amount of production
helping the
that we have in the city between film, television, and theater, there's some incredible stuff that lives there.
I know. I think I want to dig through it for new costumes.
It's in Long Island City. It's
really?
a wonderful resource. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, great. Yeah.
That's where I live. Okay, so other questions. Let's talk about the impact a little bit more on the creative economy in New York City. Talk about your expectations, maybe some benchmarks that if you're able to share any benchmarks and data with us.
This is, so at the moment, we're trying to assess the state of our creative sector, right? this is the first year that our industries are having to function without pandemic era assistance.
Right,
So,
that's
you
true.
know, we know that we were able to make a strong comeback post-pandemic. Well, I hate saying post-pandemic because
You never know
we're
if it's
still,
over.
but we're still in COVID era,
That's
if you will.
right.
But you know, those grants and that federal assistance, the Save Our Stages grants, all of that really helped get
Right.
live performance back up and running, and so many of our creative businesses running. That ended a year ago, and so we're starting to see some of the effects of that on live performance, and we know sectors are struggling, and so part of my work at Cultural Affairs is understanding how Cultural Affairs engages other city agencies,
Mhm.
and then taking some of my experience from my work at Mayor's Office of Media and
Yes.
Entertainment, just trying to understand how do we leverage city agencies and programs to better support the creative sector.
Yeah.
That I just joined Cultural Affairs 3 months ago.
Yeah,
And so I'm still in the
yeah,
process of
yeah.
learning all of the different programs that are available, and then trying to put that through in a lens of creative sector, right? Like, we know that small business services has a number of programs to support retail storefronts.
Yep.
You know, is there a model that we could take from that to help some of our creative industries? And so,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm working on for right
That's
now. and,
very important.
just meeting with lots of people and collecting a lot of information about where they are. This is truly the reason why people come to visit, live, and do business in New York is our creative sectors.
Yes.
And so we're just trying to figure out how, in this time of, you know, there's a lot of demands on the city right now.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure
I
out.
know there's a
how
lot of
we-
changes happening.
So just trying
general,
to figure
huh?
out how we leverage these resources in a way that's beneficial to these really important industries for New York.
So what would you say to the, I know we talked about this pre-show, so I'm just gonna bring it up. What would you say to the, because I hear it literally every week. What would you say to the venues that are struggling, the venues, because that trickle effect, I see it directly with the venues, to the artists, to the equipment makers of, you know, I'm very involved in the music industry, to the rehearsal studios. I mean, it's like the whole community. If the venue suffers, the whole community suffers.
Yeah.
So what would you say to the venue owners?
I think, you know, sometimes we hear from people and they're so on the brink of closing that it's like too late to help anybody.
Good point.
And so
Yeah.
it's really like looking at the headwinds,
Yeah.
planning, sort of understanding where there may be opportunities to pivot the business model,
Yeah,
right?
right. That's a good point too.
But then also projecting like, okay, I may need help with this kind of financing. I don't know how to access that. Let me go to the Department of Small Business Services to see how they can help me,
Mhm.
right? So really taking a longer look,
Yeah,
so that you're connecting with government resources
yeah,
sooner rather than later, even if the projections are 5 years out, at least we can be part of the conversation sooner.
yeah. And that's a lot of the conversation that I'm generally having is thinking about themselves as business owners.
Yes.
Rather than artists, no offense, artists, not rather than venue owners, but business owners. If you own a business, I love that you said the headwind analogy because it makes sense. Thinking towards the long term and understanding what the resources are. And I think that I know that venue owners and artists wouldn't think about small business services first
Right.
as something that they might be able to access. So that's
I
wonderful.
mean, we as a government also have to do a better job of like reminding people that these things are available too, right?
Yeah, but
And
I meant actually like connecting the
yes,
dots.
connecting, that's what I mean, like making
Yeah,
sure that
okay.
we're reaching out to.
Yeah,
And so the mayor actually did that recently when he announced this like performance council.
yes,
Theater and
can
Live
talk about
Performance
that
Council,
a little bit, please.
which is a pretty diverse group of people from that sector. It's nonprofit cultural venues, it's venues like Barclays and MSG. It's small theaters as well, like Art New York. But it's a really pretty broad cross section from the live performance and theater space to understand what are some of the challenges that they're experiencing so that they can keep the administration informed,
I
but
see.
also find solutions and recommendations and help inform some of our policies when we're doing city planning, when we're doing construction projects, when we're doing street planning.
Yeah.
And so it's the first of its kind. And I think it's a very exciting opportunity for the sector.
Yeah, I did a little bit of reading on it. It's really exciting. From the people that are involved in what the mission is, it's so timely.
Yes.
It's so timely, I think, as a citizen here to ensure that we continue the diversity in our cultural programs. And I think, I don't know, the characteristic of New York, instead of going vanilla, I say, if you know what I mean,
Yeah.
you know, to keep that vibrancy alive
Yes,
here in the city.
absolutely.
Okay, so a couple other questions here. So let's talk about female entrepreneurs and artists a little bit more. Any advice that you have beyond the programs for them in terms of just kind of day-to-day, in terms of thinking as a female artist in the city? Maybe the Women's Fund is great. November 1st, we're going to put it in show notes. But thinking about how they might want to think a little bit more about their careers and what immediate resources they can look at and learn from. If they're struggling, because there are a lot of them struggling, unfortunately.
I mean, there's not, one of the great things about New York is there are so many opportunities for women to connect with each other in different ways.
I love it.
Just like
That's
the
what I'm
work that
doing.
you're doing.
Yes.
And so I think that's first out the gate, is make
Yeah.
sure you're part of a community that's going to be supportive.
Yeah.
They might not understand your artistic vision, but they'll understand the struggle, right? And
Absolutely, that's the commonality.
So I think it's really hard to be a creative without having some kind of community that you're part of. And again, New York being New York, there's no shortage of opportunities to
Yeah.
connect into some of those. I mentioned New York Foundation for the Arts, which is a partner on a number of city programs. They have a ton of resources available for artists. But in the same way that arts is everywhere, there are arts communities everywhere.
Agreed.
So I think that's the first order of business. And then on probably a more direct but not government programmatic sense, it's also just surrounding yourself with people that are supportive.
I was gonna say, that's the key.
That will be real with you, but also like really encouraging. I mean, I've been very, very fortunate to have that kind of support in my career, in my life.
Yeah.
My team, the other folks that I've worked with, that I led at my previous agency. There's so much creativity and thoughtfulness and support for one another. I think that's really critical.
I do. I always say with Warrior Women in Business, with everything I do, I say it's about cooperation, not competitiveness.
Yeah.
Especially if you're either a small business or a creative entrepreneur, that's not going to help.
I mean, even settling into government, like other commissioners, like my current commissioner.
Yeah, well, this is
heading
how we got here
cultural
today. I
affairs,
didn't
yeah.
mention that up front, that we're gonna get into that, but then I was introduced via Cecile Noel,
Yes, that's right.
right? And this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month and Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And she not only was on the podcast episode 15, but I remember it because I loved it. She's
amazing.
She's
She's done so
amazing.
much to raise the visibility of domestic violence.
And then she was a part of my event and we raised money for the cities. And domestic violence unfortunately continues to be a problem, which is ridiculous in my personal opinion. But, it's through people like her, it's the support and getting to know what's going on in the community, how can we help? Of course, we want to help end issues or help others. So, yeah, I think that's wonderful. Okay. These are some questions that I generally ask. Anyone that I ask to be on the podcast is a warrior woman. So I find that all my guests have this one commonality. They have multiple successes, which is no easy feat. And the reason I started Warrior Women in Business, as I mentioned to you pre-show, is to help female entrepreneurs that struggle. Because they don't have multiple successes, they're looking for just one. And maybe they're doing everything right, but one little nugget is missing. can you, in your experience, think about, what do you think some of the, besides support from others, you as a person, what do you think it's taken for you to have multiple successes in your career as a person?
I think it's recognizing my strengths, but also my weaknesses.
Good answer.
And really understanding like what I'm not good at and not really interested in being good at.
Yeah.
And then finding people that can partner with me that do bring those strengths.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times, particularly during the pandemic, I would say to my team, like, are we doing the right thing? Like, this is my idea, but if it's totally crazy, you need to tell me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But really just like knowing yourself, what your goals are, and trying to like shut out the noise, right?
Yes, being focused.
Yeah.
Shut out the noise. I agree with you. I mean, of course I agree with you, but I love the, a lot of people, so I mean, I don't know how many business books you've read. I've read like 1.5 billion. And there's always this debate whether you should try to build up your weaknesses or you should focus on your strengths. I'm more in the favor of focusing on your strengths.
Yes.
Because as an entrepreneur or someone that's very busy like you, if you're spending a lot of time trying to do both,
Right.
lose that time.
Yeah. I mean, it also depends on what the weakness is. Like,
Yeah, no,
if you're
I mean-
testy, you might want to work on it. Because that is going to get in the way every time.
I mean, just,
But
I meant
if it's-
skills.
I know. Well, in some circles, testiness will be a skill.
Oh, definitely will. And listen, and if you live in New York,
Well, that's, yeah, exactly.
forget it. You have to be unbreakable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And let's talk about unbreakable for a second. So it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. For me, I'm very focused on that. I wrote a song for New York City. I don't know if you know that. But anyways, for domestic violence, I raise money for it. I contribute to the Mayor's Fund. I'm all about ending that ridiculous behavior. Not just men to women, women to women, women to men. I don't care what gender you are. But it's also the month of breast cancer awareness. And I know that you're very kind enough to share your story about survival, what you think about it, what you think women need to know.
So I was diagnosed in March of 2022.
Wow.
On a standard
Wow.
exam. I've always been diligent about getting regular exams.
Wow.
And we caught it early, but it was really aggressive. Initially we thought it was just going to be surgery.
Really?
But then it turned out that I was going to have to do chemo.
Nice.
So, in fact, a year ago today, I had just finished my treatments and I was getting ready to do a cancer walk and wasn't sure I was going to even make the 4 miles. Right, like that's
right.
So it's really, so my big thing is I was fortunate to have a ton of support. I'm fortunate to live in a city that like cares about science.
We
And
probably
access
have
to good medical care.
We have the best hospitals. Yeah.
But I really want people to understand that early detection really does save lives, and I'm going to get emotional, but
It's very true.
I've had 11 people in my family that have had this, right? I've tested negative for all markers. I think that has to do with like, just there's not enough data available on my population, but it's scary and I know people avoid it, but the sooner you can catch it, the better your chances of recovery. I am a living testament of that.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God, right?
So I just want to encourage people to go out, get screened, bring your girlfriends, and just stay on top of it. It
is about bringing your girlfriend. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's really personal.
No, it's really important to me. As part of being a woman warrior is taking care of yourself, right? So that you can continue to.
My Juilliard teacher told me something that is the best advice I've ever heard in my lifetime. I love Juilliard. But anyway, she said singers take their time and they take care of themselves. I swear, Anne, as a woman entrepreneur, I took a breath and I was like, yeah, whoa, it just like hit me because we're so busy as women in business, or if you're just working and trying to take care of the puppy, the baby, the boyfriend, the husband, the significant other, and we're not taking time for ourselves. So
you can't help others if you're not taking care of yourself. So.
Yes, the airplane analogy, it's really, really true.
Yeah, it's true.
It really is true. So Warrior Women in Business. When I asked you to be on, and I think I bugged you for like a year because I'm a psycho. I'm a little persistent.
No, I'm
much of a pit bull. When I see, I mean, she has to be on. She has to be on. She has to be on. She has to be on, please. So when I bugged you,
not at all.
what did you think when I came to you and said, I want you to be on my podcast? I'm sure you never heard of it. Warrior Women in Business.
No,
What did it like
for
resonate?
me, it is a reflection of what it is like for a lot of women in business.
Yeah, it is.
You know, I think about all of the hurdles that women have to overcome in the business sector, right? Pay equity, gender discrimination,
Pay equity.
you know, executive advancement. And so I love that you're creating this forum for women to see what resources, opportunities there are, what kind of advice we can share with each other. But when you say, I mean, you don't even have to say warrior. It's like women in business, like it's understood that they must be a warrior because they have so much to overcome in order to continue to occupy that space.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is like every guest has a different answer. I think about that and I think warrior women don't even realize that they're warriors, right? Because we're just focused, like you said, and we're just going for it. And I love what you shared, especially about women helping each other and supporting each other. And that's why I try to say to the artists all the time, like you can't just be in your little silo, making your little piece of art. You need to not only share it with the world, as they say, but work with others. And there's a lot of, I had Dawn Orlando at Funkadelic Studios on the podcast. And she's the longest running female business owner of a rehearsal studio in New York. She told me her story. I was like, whoa, you know, what she's had to come up against.
Yes.
And it's very refreshing to see that, you know, breaking barriers, but also like bringing in our natural collaborative nature that women bring. And I feel like when you were telling the story of the 4 women that helped you, I was listening, I was thinking like, that's natural. And I think we need more of that.
Well, and having people share their stories in this way, I think also helps women understand that their experience may not be as unique as they think it is.
No, it's not.
There's shared experience and there's.
Yeah. So let's talk about role models for you. It doesn't need to be somebody that we would have heard of, but
probably won't be actually. It's so funny. Like the most impactful role models in my life have been people that I've had a direct connection with. Yeah, I know it probably sounds cliche, but my mom is a single mom.
Of course.
Who immigrated here and, you know, created a village of support for us, which also happened to be women.
Which is amazing.
So, yeah. And so she's definitely up there. And then my sisterhood, like the women friendships that I've developed over the years, they actually came through for me when I was dealing with breast cancer last year.
Of course.
All incredibly successful in different ways, whether they're raising families or working or raising families and working, to running their small businesses, but still finding time to like connect with their friends and be present at times when we need it. It's those people that I find most inspiring, that are just making their way through, showing up every day and still finding ways to support other women in really small and big ways. I've had the good fortune of having really strong mentors throughout my career.
And how did you find those mentors? I know a lot of my audience asks about mentorship and finding mentors.
You know, some of it are people that were my supervisors. A lot of them were people that were my supervisors, but some of them were just peers. Right? And something that I feel like people don't take into account very often is, you know, especially when you go to sort of young women development, professional development gatherings, I always remind them, like, the person sitting next to you might be a really good mentor for you, because they're just going to have a different take on the world and have a different experience that might help inform how you want to like be. And I found that I found a lot of good mentors in that space, for sure. Some people I've worked with previously that were my own staffers that really helped me helped shape my outlook and my leadership style. And I'm so grateful for them.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what puts all the pieces of the puzzle together, right? So before we met today, I had my one of my longtime clients, who I consider family at this point, recently retired from Roche Diagnostics, flew in today to teach at Columbia Business School.
And you'd never met?
Never met.
Yeah.
Been my client for 10, I guess it's almost 10 years, has referred 22 clients to me. And the reason I met him is he was on the board of the diversity and inclusion team at Roche, and has always supported women. And we had breakfast this morning, and I walked him in and I thought, he's my mentor.
Yes.
Like, I never really thought about it. It's interesting. It's really like you develop these relationships and they give you advice and you're helping each other, and then it's like light bulb goes off. Wow, that person is a mentor.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think you have mentors in all different segments, and you just kind of keep your eyes and your ears open, right?
Yeah, I mean, even right where I am right now, part of the team that I'm on, two of them come from very strong government background, and worked in the city council for a long time. And then another one works in philanthropy. They're all men. But comes from a philanthropic background, and then I come from the government operations space. And so it's just a really nice synergy that we've developed with each other, and we're learning from each other in different ways. But you know, I probably consider them among my mentors as well. Yeah,
absolutely. So I know you shared so much with us today.
I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about my favorite subjects.
It is mine too. I was like, the arts, please, let's talk about the arts. Not that talking about law or finance is not interesting, or healthcare, but the arts, come on. So we talked about a lot today. Is there anything else you want to share? I know in the show notes, we're going to provide all your program links and everything. Anything else you want to share that's timely? I know my favorite season in New York City is coming up. First of all, Halloween, but the Christmas season is coming up, where we have a lot of going on in arts and culture, and what's it called, the Perlman Center?
The Perlman Center.
So maybe you could share a little bit about that, or anything that you want to share that's new related to arts and culture in New York City.
So the Perlman Center just opened at the World Trade Center. It's an incredible new facility, but honestly, I think people really need to look close in their neighborhoods. There is so much across New York City that really form the center of community in many neighborhoods. And so I think what I would love to just make sure people hear is, you need to go out and support your arts and culture. And you know, I often hear, oh, it's expensive. There is some kind of artistic, creative happening in New York for everyone.
Absolutely.
There's free events, there's high-end events, there's a ton in between. But it really is what makes New York, New York. And it's so uplifting to go and see. You know, it's very easy to get caught in the day-to-day, but when you go and see a show, you're really...
It's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
My friends, they always say, oh my God, I gotta go to a Broadway show. And I say it too.
Right.
Like, why haven't I been to a Broadway show in like 10 years?
Yeah, there's some good stuff out on Broadway right
and
now.
There's so many great resources, like tickets and
you
know, to go to things
TDF,
off Broadway. I think that we need to support off Broadway shows.
I think it's still off Broadway right now.
It is. It is.
And then
I see the ads on the subway. They're adorable.
And then TDF just celebrated its 75th anniversary.
I can believe
it.
TKTS, which
I've
is
seen
so
many
great.
shows through TKTS.
So have I. So have I. And the lotteries, and there's just so many things always happening here. Yeah, you can't be bored in the city. There's so much going on.
That's why people tend to want to be here.
And that gives the opportunities for the artists to see what's going on. I think some of the things that you listed, I love the 40 years of public arts. I know so many talented artists, not just musicians, but all artists, sculptors and things.
And they're in the most interesting places too. We just put the ribbon on one last week at Corlear's Ferry Landing.
Oh, I know where that is.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful temporary installation that just went out over there. So I encourage people to check it out.
Yeah, sometimes I'm walking and I think it's maybe just Chelsea Piers on the
Mhm.
waterfront, and I'll see something, and then I think, how did this just happen, but it didn't just happen.
No.
There's an agency behind it, there's work
There's a
behind
few
it.
agencies.
There's probably a few
Yes.
agencies, and I think the artists need to understand what they are and look out for these and be able to submit
Yes.
and get involved instead of just, so I think getting out to the community, I love that you talked about that. The public arts programs, NYFA, right?
Mhm.
I love what's going on. I can't wait to see what happens with this live performance council.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
And also just keep creating, I think
Yeah,
at one point you
that's
had
a good
asked, like,
point.
what can
I
creatives
did,
do
yeah,
to support?
yeah.
And it's really just keep creating, but also like I don't need a volunteer at the agency. I need people to continue to create so the agency can point to the creative sector here.
Yeah,
But to get involved, I mean, get to know your city council person, get to know your local electeds, vote, right?
voting is nice.
It's really important.
Yeah.
But to make your presence known as a creative in New York City, I think is really, really important.
Yes, it is, yes. Okay,
I really appreciate you having me on. It's been so fun.
this has been wonderful. It's like eye-opening on so many levels.
And thank you for everything you're doing to connect women to these resources.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't really try, it just weirdly came to me. I just, I've always been out there supporting business and doing business, and then so many women just need the help. And I'm not the total answer at all. I'm a fragment. We
It's
need,
all about being a convener, so.
yeah, I need to bring in the right people to share their message, and you never know what this episode is going to do. And I just hope the artists take action. I hope that they take action so they can stay in the city and live here and thrive and not struggle. Because the term struggling artist, in my opinion, needs to go away.
Yes, yeah.
It needs to get, like, go in a trash can somewhere
Yes,
and just,
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you so much for being on,
Appreciate it.
sharing everything about business, your history, your experience, your advice, the programs. I know everyone is really excited to listen in today. So with that being said, again, this is Warrior Women in Business. We're just wrapping up episode 46. Episode 47 is to be announced. Again, any information or questions that you may have, you can send an email to info@warriorwomenbusiness.com. If you're on any of our social media right now, you can just put something in the chat. We'll get back to you, and we're going to send out all the show notes and information. You can sign up on warriorwomenbusiness.com to our website. All the resources. It's October. We're closing in on the deadline.
Yeah.
For the
November
fund.
1st.
So I would say, like, that is, any artist that's listening, this should be your priority. And a lot of you know me personally, so just send me a text. I am more than happy to send you the information. I'm applying in 2 categories. Everybody should be applying. It's so nice what the city is doing to help us know that we're one unit, right?
Yes.
And that's what I want to end the show with. So thank you so much for tuning in. Warrior Women Business, episode 46, Jasmine Sandler. And you can say last few words.
Just thank you and keep creating.
Keep creating. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.